We are back, and today we're talking about fire extinguishers. Everything from what's under your kitchen cabinet to what's in your shop and in between, especially what goes in your race car. Let's get started. One of the common questions I get from a lot of people is, do you sell used fire bottles or fire safety equipment? And the simple question is no. I sell no used safety equipment other than the occasional seat. I take safety very seriously, and maybe it's because I'm a veteran of the service. Maybe I've had way too many life-threatening experiences or near-death experiences, but fire safety is a big thing for me, safety in general. I don't sell used seat belts, I don't sell used fire bottles, I don't sell anything safety-related used, and that's for good reason. You should always buy safety equipment new that meets SFI regulation. That's just my personal opinion. What you choose to do is upon you. As many of you have ever seen or ever heard, you know, $10 helmet for a $10 brain. And I've seen it a million times. I've seen people that will spend $15,000 on some garbage wet, some small block motor and buy the cheapest seat. And when it goes to safety equipment for themselves, they'll pull out a mail order catalog, which is the worst place to buy your safety equipment. Go to the bottom price. Hey, I'll take that helmet, cheapest one they got. I see it at dirt tracks. I see it at asphalt tracks. I see it in vintage stock car racing and track day cars, and it's upsetting and it's appalling. There have been instances where I've seen cars go on track and I've waited for them to come in before I've gone out to run my car simply because of that. I don't want to be involved in any mishap or anything that happens or be a part of any situation that takes place with that. So today we're going to talk about fire bottles. We're going to go over the different types of fire bottles, different types of fires. We're going to install 2 brand new bottles in our track day Supra. This is a 10-pound bottle. These are self-ignition bottles. They have a little capsule in them that melts when they're exposed to fire. And we have a manual pull bottle. This one's 5 pounds. We're gonna mount both of these low to the right as far as we can in our car for more weight distribution on the road course. We're gonna go over different discharge nozzles, mounting brackets, pull cables, types of line from stainless braided to aluminum tubing, types of fires, Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie. There are different types of fires, need different extinguishers for different types. We're going to go over fire extinguisher sizes and the chemical inside of them and what you should have. So let's get started with this. We'll move these out of the way. Move my phone out of the way. Now, these are your common household fire suppression systems. They will extinguish an Alpha, Bravo, or Charlie fire. If you don't know what those are, an Alpha fire is your typical trash, wood, paper, stuff you'd find in a trash can. A Bravo fire is a chemical fire. It's going to be gasoline, gear oil, any kind of liquid that burns, diesel fuel, things of that nature. A Charlie fire is an electrical fire. It's going to be something to do with the electrical system within your race car, a 12-volt system, whether it be an electrical fan shorting out, a stepper motor gauge, something to do with the alternator overcharging, or, God forbid, a battery explosion. I've seen that. We're going to go over electrical systems as well. I've already wired a bunch of things in our car. Now, this belongs nowhere near being mounted inside your race car. This is a little 2.5 pound under the kitchen fire extinguisher. You got your baby mama laid up at the house and your crumb snatcher's running late for school and she's in there burning up the bacon you made and you need to run in and put a fire out. This is great. You can dump some salt on it, put a lid on it, or spray it with one of these. That'll work fine. Same thing goes with these little fire bottle cans. These both came out from underneath the kitchen in my house and they'll go back in there shortly. Those work fine for stuff like that. They do not belong mounted in any race car of any type for any reason. And I see people use these all the time. I have seen a race car with 2 of these duct taped to the roll bar and they've allowed it to run. I think it's comical. I have seen these hose clamped to a bar inside of a car. Tell me how you're gonna get that out with 2 hose clamps on it and what good it's gonna do. I don't know, but I've seen it. Like I said, they don't belong in your race car. Let's talk about shop fires. This is a Halotron fire extinguisher. I have 2 of these in my shop. Shop safety is another important thing. If you're gonna weld on something, if you're gonna do something crazy and it involves fire, take it outside of your shop, especially if you have a garage attached to your house. Don't burn that thing down, man. I have seen too many videos and too many posts of people that have burnt down their entire shop and their house because they were attached simply because they were not prepared with a simple fire extinguisher. I have 2 of these in this building. I have 2 of them in my other building. I take fire safety serious. Some of you may have seen recently, there's been a race car team that set an entire race shop on fire because they were fueling a car, pumping race fuel into it, sitting on a surface plate, not grounded, inside the building, caused a spark, there was a flash fire, burned up a lot of stuff. I've seen it happen with drag racers. I've seen it happen with people that use plastic poly blown fuel cells. They hold static very badly. That's something you need to pay attention to and take very seriously. I keep reiterating seriously and safety a lot because it's very, very important to you and your family. You need to realize that racing is a hobby. Some people do it as a profession. And 99.9% of the professionals you see out there use professional SFI rated fire suits, underwear, helmets, gloves, shoes, fire suppression systems. I'm talking about the amateur guy that runs Saturday night on a short track or a dirt track somewhere. You need to take it as serious as you can. Your family depends on you. God forbid something happens to you and you get hurt and you can't provide for your family. I've seen it. I've seen people do this stuff and then they depend on GoFundMes. Hey, I'm stupid. I did something dumb. I burned my ass up. Please pay for my family and my medical bills. That's the dumbest thing in the world. I don't understand why as a society we think it's okay to pay for somebody's stupidity, but we continue to do it. Moving on. This is the standard style system that you will see in most of your stock cars. It's usually a 10-pound bottle like this with a glass pill and a discharge nozzle that runs into the trunk of your car. This one's outdated. This one's about 8 years old. This one has no pressure in it, but it is filled with liquid up to about here, and the gauge is in the red. So there's no pressure in it, but it is filled with fire suppressant liquid. Is this one still good? No, it is not, simply because the bottle can no longer be hydro tested or recertified. It's more than 5 years old. That's something you need to pay attention to as well. I see people that buy these fire bottles on eBay. Hey, I bought a fire bottle on eBay, it's charged, and they take it somewhere to get it recertified or refilled, or the gauge starts to creep, and they spent $250 on a bottle, they can't recertify. That's something you need to know is the age of the bottle before you buy it and go to recertify it. This is a manual discharge bottle. This cable was mounted to this bottle and it ran up to a hose, and this hose sprays the driver. Before 2021, the rule was you had to have a single pill that ignited in the rear fuel cell can area of the car. Most of these went into the package tray area. Now with the new system, if you look here, we've got dual tubes. One goes out to the engine compartment and one goes into the trunk. We'll get into that. This is a manual release. To arm it, there's a pull cable just like this that arms the bottle, and you can manually pull it. Very, very simple. The unfortunate thing is that when you see this bottle mounted in a car and this cable in the car, I have gone to various races and I have seen idiots on track with this pin still in the bottle, this cable in the bottle, and this clip with a little tag inside the handle. Now, if somebody could explain to me in the comments how, when your car's on fire, you're going to unbelt yourself, reach halfway across the car, pull this pin out, remove that pin with that tag on it, and then pull this bottle to set off your fire extinguisher and put out a fire when you're already on fire, up, down, and disoriented. I don't know how, but I see that shit all the time, and it's infuriating. I don't get it. When you go on track, you need to make sure this pin is out of the bottle, the cable end is inserted into it, the actual pull fire bottle tab is removed from the pull handle, and the handle is ready to pull and discharge. You need to make sure that happens. We'll slide these to the side. Going in our Track Day Supra is a new 10-pound bottle. This is a dual discharge bottle. Now, I've gone online and printed out from the NASCAR portal and rule book where these bottles can be mounted, what location the discharge nozzles have to be in, where the mounts are, what they look like, and where they can be mounted. Now, our Track Day Supra is going to have this 10-pound discharge bottle. It has a 4 and a 6-foot lead on it. One goes into the engine compartment, which on this paper it shows us where we can locate this nozzle by the rules. And we have one that goes in the package tray in the rear that's over the top of our fill plate and our fuel cell. There's a cap on the top. There's also a discharge that you can screw onto here. There's a cap top that can screw on here. You can discharge this with a pull cable as well. Now, the most important thing to remember about this entire system is that It needs to be mounted properly in your car, and the nozzles need to be mounted so that they actually put out an external fire before it reaches the interior compartment of your car. This is a new 5-pound bottle. We'll open this up real quick. It's a new 5-pound bottle. Both of these are from the Fire Bottle Company, and both of these came directly from my friend Brian Rogers at Circle Track Warehouse. So if you're looking to buy one, he sells all of this equipment brand new. We'll open this up and get the bottle out. This is a new 5-pound bottle. That's everything in the box. Move it out of the plastic. Comes with mounting instructions for the handle and an adapter to run a hose for the discharge. Now, like I was saying about these bottles, this top piece, as you can see with the pin here, it's removable. This top piece can screw onto the top of this bottle and the cable goes in here. Now, if we remove it, you'll see that there is a plunger on the inside. I'll get a close-up of this. Like I said, this also screws onto your 10-pound bottle, and you can make this a manual discharge bottle as well and run 3 nozzles all off of one bottle at one time by putting a hose in it here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put this back on our lead in-car bottle, and we're gonna mount both of these within the car. Let me do a close-up real quick on these. Now this is a close-up of the discharge nozzle adapter on the top of the bottle. It screws on here. One of the things that you have to remember is that if there is no discharge cable hooked into this bottle and the set screw is not set, this will discharge if you remove the pin. You have to be aware of that. This nozzle is where the fluid will come out, your actual extinguisher agent. On the inside, as you can see, there is a sharp tube that pierces this bottle. This bottle is filled with liquid agent to extinguish the fire. On the inside of this, if you've never seen one of these, there's an aluminum capsule right there. And what happens is they fill this bottle and a machine screws that cap in, and it actually screws that brass insert in. What happens is you pull your fire cable, the cable slides out, it releases that pin, and if you look to this hole here, you can see where the spring is that launches this into the bottle. You can see the holes in the side of it that allow the extinguisher agent out through this port, which has an adapter that screws on the side and then mounts to the hose. Now, all of this gets mounted in the car, and depending on whether or not you use an aluminum tube with a discharge nozzle on it, which there are several sizes and styles available. You've got a red, a blue, some of these are 2 and 3 inputs. This is a driver-directed spray nozzle. This is another fire bottle nozzle that sprays a wide range directly at the driver as well. These are our mounting clips for both styles. And what happens is when the bottle's mounted in the car, and we'll go over this when it is mounted in the car, one slides from the top, one slides from the bottom. That traps it in the hole. You tighten the nut on the back, just like that. And your fire bottle tip is encapsulated within the sheet metal of your car. Now, like I said, each and every one of these, the new bottle has covers on it, but this is an old bottle. As you can see, there is a glass capsule inside there. That little blue liquid in that glass capsule will melt with direct fire. Some of them have the temperature at which they actually melt and fall apart printed on them. This one does not. Now, the rule book says we can mount this anywhere on the right side floor or behind the driver on the bar. Now, we're going to mount this on the right side, and this square we're going to mount it on the right side door bars where we can, over here, as low as we can. That's where we're going to mount them in our car. Now, over here on my lower right door bar is where I want to mount my fire bottle. I'm going to mount my large bottle back here, and I think I'm going to mount my small bottle back here. I'm going to get as much weight as far back into the right side as I can. These brackets clamp onto the chassis. They slide over the bar, the bottle slides in, and then you run your lines to the engine and to the back of the car where your fuel cell's at. First thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna clamp these onto the chassis, and then we're gonna slide our 10-pound bottle in here, and we'll get everything mounted. Let's cut these cable ties loose. This is gonna allow the cable to spring free. Just be careful of the tip and where it lands. Now we'll get this bottle mounted here, and we'll set the spacing off of the floor, and then we will mock up our small bottle and get an idea of where everything's going to sit. Now, this is just a mock-up for the moment. I know I want this bottle here. And once this mount is torqued down and it encapsulates the chassis rail, it's not going to go anywhere. Now this is my front discharge nozzle, and we also have a set of rules that show where this can go on the firewall. So let's unravel the tension off of this one, separate it from our rear line. We'll set this back here in the back for now. This is going to go up towards the front, so we'll bring it around like this. And up here towards the front. This is the forward-facing discharge nozzle. It comes from my 10-pound bottle we mounted on the right side door bar. Now this has to meet the NASCAR rules for it to be legal. According to the printout from the portal, the rule says we can be no more than 15 inches off center, which if you look here, that's our 15-inch mark right there. Our hole is here where my thumb is at, so we're well within the 15-inch mark. And it can be no further than 12 inches down from the top of the firewall. So we're definitely going to meet the 12 inches part. We're only 5. So our positioning hole is legal. I drilled this hole with a 7/8 drill bit to get this nozzle through there. And we're going to use our mounting washers to mock it up. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull the cover off of here, and you can see our discharge nozzle. What I'm going to do is I'm going to work this through the hole. We'll get it mounted. I'll put the clips on it, and then we'll work on our rear nozzle next. Now I've got that mocked up in place. It's hand tight. We'll torque it to spec once we get all of the hoses run and mounted to the frame rail. Now, up next, we're going to have to remove our rear window and our quarter windows. The main reason for this is that this rear window, I have an updated window that actually has the air evacuation slits cut in the rear window. Helps keep the car cool, and it helps pull air from the inside of the car. The other reason is we have to run that hose to the package tray in the back of the car. And our actual discharge point is going to be up here underneath the back of the package tray. It's going to make it a lot easier to get a hand in underneath here and through where this rear window is mounted. So let's get started with that. Welcome back, everybody. As you can see, I've got my 10-pound bottle mounted here, low right and on the door bar, and behind it, I've got my driver discharge bottle. I had a friend come by from the Xfinity team, and he told me on this 10-pound bottle to remove the plastic cap, and they run an AN cap on the end of the bottle. just in case there's an accidental discharge or any kind. I asked him what the heat issue would be running it above the floor right here. He said nothing really. He said with the amount of air that moves between the floor pan and the tailpipe and the amount of time that we run this car, heat isn't going to be a problem. If anything, just keep an eye on the bottle gauge. We're in the middle of the good. Just make sure it doesn't override the bottle pressure at 400 pounds and it should be fine. Same thing goes for the driver pull bottle. You can also see on my frame rails right here on the roll bar, stainless cable ties. I use these only for the fire bottle hose lines in case there is a catastrophic fire of any kind. These are not going to melt. These are stainless steel. You can find them on Amazon. You can find them at Lowe's, Home Depot. I only use them for the discharge bottle. Up next, we're going to put our heat shield on the bottom of this fuel line. We're going to add one more here for our discharge nozzle. I'll show you where both nozzles are in the trunk and in the engine bay, and then we're going to move on to some electrical stuff. Now this is a fuel line heat shield. These came from KBM. I have them in my truck. I got a couple sets of these from Matt Lucas, a friend of mine that worked at Hittori before he moved on to AM Racing. There were some cars sitting behind their building that were from KBM. They were Xfinity cars. There was a box of 8 of these in the trunk, and I bought all those cars, and I moved them out of there. I found these in the trunk, so I'm going to use a set on this car, keep the fuel line cool, and we'll install it here, and it clamps to the bottom of the fuel line right there. Aluminum dissipates heat faster than steel, and I'll show you how to install these. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use a stainless cable tie. We'll just bend the bottom of the back of it so that it filters through the bottom of this heat shield. It just has an aluminum tab welded to the bottom of it. What I'll do now is I'll push that through, twist it in place, slide it through, get it started here, then I'll move that back. That's good right there. Now I'm going to use another clip to actually hold my discharge nozzle in line in combination with this. So what I'm going to have to do is loop it around, and I'll use this clip as a standoff. We'll get that locked in place. I'll slide it around. A nice little curve on the bottom here. And I'm just using this plastic clip as a standoff. It does nothing more than stand it off from the aluminum fuel line. We'll feed this through, feed it under the fuel line, all this lined up, which can be a complete and absolute pain in the ass. So that's the heat shield installed. It's not going anywhere. And like I said, I just use this plastic clip on top of the fuel line as a standoff so the two don't rub against each other. That stainless zip tie will hold it in place. Nothing's going anywhere. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to vacuum this out real quick. Then we'll take a look at both ends. And we're going to put the rear window in. As you can see here with our 10-pound bottle, we have one hose coming out of the right side. That hose is following the roll bar on the door, our lower bar all the way over to the tunnel, and it follows all the way up the back with the brake line. Now it's mounted here in the package tray. As you can see, our main discharge nozzle in the package tray is located here, centrally located above the fill plate. If we have any fire in this area, either with the vent, the actual supply line, the fuel filler, the fuel filter, or our main engine supply line, this would set off automatically due to the heat and flame and would fill this entire trunk compartment with flame retardant. This would put out any fire in this location. What I'm going to do now is put the cover back on it, and once we go out for track day, we'll pull this off when we prep the car. So as many of you know, I planned on changing the rear window in the car. I do have one with grooves in it. Unfortunately, it's got a big gash in the corner. I got it for free. A friend of mine that works for an Xfinity team said, hey, I think this one's damaged. We're not going to use it. He gave it to me, and I was going to use it. I'll show you what it looks like. I pulled the plastic covering off of it, but man, it is gouged pretty bad right there. Now for everyday use, it'd be fine, but I don't want to put it on this car. I am doing everything as far as I can to the highest quality and standard in my likeness. It's unfortunate I'm not able to use that one, but all the best plans in the world don't always work out. So we're going to go back to this one. Welcome back, everyone. It's been about a week since I shot that last portion of this video, and I'll be quite honest with you, I wasn't happy putting the original window back in. I was going to install this window. This is a current updated window with the window slits in it by the bottom corner of it. It's completely thrashed. I made a small video segment about that earlier, and I wasn't happy with this. This shit's going in the garbage. So I went out, cut some grass, made a few calls to some friends, and I came up with another brand new rear window with the current window slits in it. So I'm gonna snatch the original window out real quick, put this one in place, mark it for my jack bolts and my track bar adjuster. We're gonna bolt this sucker in and we're gonna move on. In between then and now, I have wired most of this car. Really the only thing left is from the battery cutoff switch to the battery box. What I'm gonna do now is mark my actual track bar locator. My jack stud locators are different. I've actually changed the mounts, I've moved them lower. So once I get it in the car, I can mark those with a Sharpie, but I'm gonna mark this one real quick. Sit this to the side. We'll keep this one for safekeeping and later use. I'll just sit it right here and we'll stick this into our car. Pretty happy with that. What I'm going to do now is get an extension and stick them in the upright jack bolt holes and mark it with a Sharpie. Eight and a quarter and 5.5. Let's see where we are over here. Eight and a quarter, and setting the body, we're right at 5 on that one. Our updated rear window is in, and I'm super happy with the way it looks. It's got the current modern rear slits in the window. I did move the jack bolts, but our track bar locators stayed in the same spots. I've cut the holes for those, installed new decals, and mounted the window. Shark fins also on the car. Many of you may or may not have seen that I was able to pick up Kirk Shelmerdine's car pretty cheap off of the internet. It's going to paint tomorrow, and I've got it loaded in the trailer. I'm going to drop that off first thing, and then I'm going to return here and I'm going to finish up this video. I'm going to show you all of the electrical that I've done. We're going to mount the right side of the dash, our MSD box and coil, run that through, and we're going to get this thing ready to go back on the ground again. We'll install the windshield, the hood, and our tethers, and we'll get it loaded in the trailer. It currently has all of the correct gear oil, transmission gear oil, motor oil. There's 5 gallons of Mobil 1 in the dry sump tank, and it's got water in it. Its next step after that is a setup plate. Then we're going to do a timing check and a carburetor check, and it should be ready for its first track day. It's come a long way. I appreciate every one of you for watching these videos and seeing how this car's been put together. I hope it gives you an in and out understanding of how stock cars are built. This is not a revenue stream for me. This is a way for me to educate many of you that have never been around this sport or understand it, how these cars are put together. I greatly appreciate it. If you have questions or comments, please like, subscribe, and leave them below. And we're going to continue shooting this video in the morning. It's not the end of it, so don't go anywhere. Welcome back, my friends. The sound you hear on the roof, that's rain from Hurricane Debbie running through. Last time we got the rear window put in the car, decals on for our jack bolts and our track bar adjuster. Up next, I'm going to do a quick, brief overview of the wiring on this car. Everything in it has been put together by myself. We've used Raychem DR25 heat shrink. The DR stands for diesel resistant. I highly suggest you use that. All of the connectors are Deutsch connectors front to rear in this car. There are a few crimped eye terminals here and there for power access. That's about the only thing you're going to see on here, and for grounds. Everything's been heat shrink. Everything's been routed together. Everything's been using cable ties and cable tie holders to hold the tubing and wiring together to keep things from flopping around. I hate when people just continuously wrap cable ties across every single thing for every single wire. I think it kind of looks out of place, in personal opinion. I've routed all the battery cable, everything from the starter wire, from the actual alternator back to the disconnect switch, and I'm using a 3-post disconnect switch, which looks like this from Brown & Miller. Let me grab a 2-post real quick. This is a 2-post disconnect. As you can see, it's just got 2 battery posts in it. Main battery power in, main battery power to the car, disconnects it. This 3-post, they make several different designs of this. There's even a 4-post now. But this 3-post, you can run your main battery power in, everything including your MSD and accessories off of one, and you can isolate your alternator terminal on the other. What does that do? When you turn the power off, it isolates the alternator from the rest of the car, the battery from your ignition circuits, and everything. It shuts the car down completely. I've seen some cars at racetracks where people have hit the master disconnect switch and the ignition switch, and the car keeps running, and they don't know why. Unfortunately, the way they have their car wired, the alternator feeds back, keeps the circuit energized, and it keeps the car running. They have to choke it out with a clutch, or they have to pull a coil wire. It's kind of a messy thing, and I don't like that. I like the added safety. We're actually running 2 battery disconnects in this car, one on the dash and there's one on the driver's tunnel, to split the batteries into 2 different circuits. I'll show you that as well. Then we're going to get into mounting the right side dash top, our ignition panel with the MSD box and coil. We're going to wire that. We're going to hook up our coil. We're going to put the windshield and the hood on, and we're going to be done with this video. So let's jump on that. Let's walk around the driver's side, and I'll show you most of the wiring in this car. So let's take a look at the dashboard. I'm using all auto meter. Everything in here is an auto meter stepper motor gauge. This is my TRD switch panel, ignition switch on. Over here we have our gauge reset. Here, our master power and our brake bias, which runs to the balance bar up in the front. Our gauge reset is used. Sometimes when you start these cars, the ignition circuit will see a surge in power, and some of your gauges may drop out or may read erratically. You reset the power just to the gauges while the car is running, and it will reset everything and it will run perfectly. Over here, you'll notice there's no fuse block in this car. If you look at every switch is a breakered switch. Every switch has a number on it rated for the amount of amps each switch will continuously hold. Our ignition circuit, it has a breaker on the back of this particular switch. You can flip the switch on and off, and the breaker circuit is protected on the ignition side. Let's take a look underneath the dash. This is an original TRD wiring harness. I'm using part of it, and I've made my own gauge harness from brand new MSD pigtails. They go all the way out to the actual transducers up on the firewall. This runs down to our fan, our radiator fan, and our brake fans. This comes across. We have our starter circuit, which works off of the starter button right here. Our starter circuit, these are for the driver fan. These are going to run down the leg boards. I just have them looped off and hanging here off of this Deutsch connector. This comes apart. This mount is bolted to the roll bar here to hold it in place. This is my gauge power circuit. This is a standoff that powers my car. From here, we go from the actual switch underneath the dash, our 3-post switch. It comes through, mounts here. Power goes out to our actual starter solenoid, mounted right here, and power will go out to our dash gauges. From the front of the car, you can see this white wire. This is our alternator wire. It goes down here on the dash to a bulkhead connector. That wire comes out of the bulkhead right here with a disconnect. This is a Deutsch disconnect. Runs along the intake manifold and mounts here. That's our alternator circuit. As you can see here on the firewall, I've made a bulkhead connector out of a carbon plate with actual 6 and 4-pin connectors. These are Deutsch connectors, and they power our transducers for fuel pressure and oil pressure. The fuel pressure comes out of the sending block, runs right here into the back of the fuel log for the carburetor. And our oil pressure right here runs down, comes across, and goes into the back of the engine right here. This wire is power, and this power wire comes out and feeds directly to the crane distributor. A red light will come on right here next to the actual temperature transducer for the water. So this is our water temperature probe, connected with Deutsch connectors here, and this is the one for our oil temperature. We get actual oil temperature after it comes out of the cooler, up, in through the filter, and then out of the filter into the main engine oil gallery. My HD50 battery charger connector is here. It runs directly across. It's grounded to the chassis here. It runs underneath the roll bar and into the back of my disconnect so that when this switches off, I can still charge my battery through this cable. Here's my coil wire with a grommet running through the firewall. These are my temperature transducers on the top, and these are the pressure on the bottom. Here we have our fire bottle probe. It's mounted correctly as the NASCAR rules say, and it's mounted right here in the correct position just above the transducers. All of the wire in this car, we're going to put this back on here until we're actually going to race it. All of the wire in this car is either TFZL wiring or GXL wiring. You can see that in the connectors and how everything is run. Everything's mounted so it doesn't flop around loose. I've used a lot of connectors in it, cables to keep things from flopping and moving. The same thing goes for our fire bottle lines. Everywhere I can, it's tied in place. You're not going to get much heat up here, so I've used small cable ties here. Then if you look down on the bottom, you'll see I use stainless steel cable ties on everything else. Our driver activated bottle, that discharge nozzle is mounted here with an 8L clamp. It's a number 4 line. It's got 3 ports that will fog the inside of the car with fire retardant. Nothing up here gets hot, so I've used a cable tie holder here and here. It runs down onto the door bar. Then we go into stainless cable ties because these run down along the passenger door bar near the exhaust. And that bottle is mounted here. The pin is in that bottle. I'm using a Safecraft pin to hold that bottle in. The manual discharge nozzle, it will plug in right here, but I have not set that yet because this 3/4 inch cable is going to actually mount to my leg board. Once I get the car to the shop and I build the leg boards, this will all be attached. These bottles are mounted exactly how the NASCAR rules say they are. Here's my secondary battery disconnect switch. It's on a mount that was made by Michael Waltrip Racing. This can isolate my battery even more. So everything is run and held in place with cable clamps. Right now they call them P-clamps as well. Shifter boot is made, brand new SFI Spec 48.1. My LaJoy seat is mounted, brand new seat with new seat cover made by Randy, great stuff. In the back of the car you can see our brake ducts on the package tray that go down to our rear brakes. Here's our main fire bottle line. This runs to the rear of the car and it's mounted just above the fuel cell. As you can see, it runs down, across our brake lines, back through, and into the bottle. It's got an AN cap on the end of it. This bottle is self-extinguishing, so if there's a fire and it melts the capsule, either in the trunk or the engine, it's going to extinguish those fires. Up next, let's get to putting in our dash top, our MSD panel, wire this, and put the windshield in. This is the ignition box that I wired for the Supra. This is an MSD 6631. It's an HVC box, internal MSD rev limiter. Some of them you'll see an external rev limiter mounted on the tray as well. This is a carbon tray. I don't remember exactly where I got it from, but altogether I think I've got 5 of these trays. And this is an MSD HVC 8250 coil. I've wired this for a single ignition box setup. The NASCAR Xfinity Series went to this in about 2016, 2017, a single system. I've wired this system myself. So as you can see, we have our ignition box and our coil. A Deutsch connector pin here wires it into our main plug. We have the ground and the coil feed that will come out, and they are marked to go to our tachometer. That's the A side of the plug because all of this came from box A on a dual system setup. I'm also using the A box here. This box actually came from JGR, came from a friend of mine, and it's got a temperature strip on it. On this HVC box, this is a shielded wire that runs out to our crane distributor. This is a magnetic pickup, dual wire. It's shielded. There's a ground wire that comes in here. It grounds both boxes and the coil together. They come out and run down this plug and they're grounded to the chassis. I do have to remove that plug once we get our carbon dash in. Our coil wire will come through here, and our actual MSD signal wire will go through here for our distributor. This will get riveted in place, and it's held in place. It has a notch in it for a body mount here. First thing we're gonna do is we're gonna install this, then we'll bolt our actual MSD panel down, run the wiring, and then we'll move on to getting our windshield installed. Up next, we're gonna install the carbon dash top. Good thing about carbon is you can just kind of fold this stuff in half and get it to where you want it to go. And just put it in here. And that is it. So that's going to sit right about there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drop a few rivets in these holes real quick, and then I'm going to set my box in place before I rivet it down. In some cases, I've seen where several race teams have used a thin bead of black silicone around the edge of this to hold it down. I don't do that for one simple reason. I don't plan on running more than 45 minutes at the most with this car. And if I ever have to remove this particular portion of the dash, I want to be able to get it out without having to rip out a bunch of silicone and then to re-glue it. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to sit my MSD box in, and I'm going to mark the holes where all the mounts are. As you can see up here in the front, it's already drilled for 1032 screws to hold everything down in the front. Here's my box. I'll get this moved into place, and it's going to go right about there. I think that looks pretty good. What I will have to do is get my small screws and mount them in the front first before I go any further or mark anything else. But I'm happy with that. So let me grab some of those real quick. Front portion is mounted. I just got to put my 1/4-inch screw in here. And that is the ignition panel mounted. It's not going anywhere. I'm going to add a few more screws to through bolt this here, and we will be done with this portion of mounting the ignition panel. I think it's going to look really good when I'm done with it, and I'm really happy with that. Let's get some more screws. This is my signal wire out to the magnetic pickup on the distributor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut these cable ties loose. I'm going to take the end of it off, and we will run this out to the distributor. We'll use a grommet right here in the front. Why am I running it this far over on the dash? Well, simply because the actual opening for the distributor is right here on the firewall, and it's going to come down and run through there. First thing I need to do is grab my tools and pull this connector off here for this Deutsch connector. So let me do that real quick. Awesome, that's through the firewall and connected. This goes to my distributor pickup. As you can see, the cable runs through here. What we're going to do now is we're going to put a couple cable retainers here, and then we're going to run our main power wire across. For now, I'm going to roll this up and I'm going to sit it on my intake manifold because I want to finish what's inside the car first. Well, everybody, we've just about reached the finish line on our track day Supra. As you can see, much of the major fabrication has been done and the car has been assembled. I'm really happy with the way it came out. I do have some final finish fab stuff to do, but I can't really do it until I get it on a service plate and go through setup. I need to install the front splitter and our radiator air dam pan. This seals off the bottom of the car from the edge of the splitter all the way back underneath the actual oil pan of the car. We've got to install that. I'm not doing it now because I'll have to get under there and do adjustments to the front end for bump steer, ride height, set the alignment and the toe and everything, and that's just going to be in the way for now. So that'll be one of the last things to do. I also need to make left and right leg boards for the interior. I've ordered seat belts. I'll pick them up next week when I'm in town. So this stuff's got to go with me. Brake ducts got to go on, but like I said, putting brake ducts and things like that on at this point are just kind of moot because I've got to go into setup on it as well. I did a quick walk around for you guys to take a look at the car and see what condition it's in now and tell me what you think down below. I would really appreciate it. I do have some quick questions that a lot of people have been asking lately through social media such as Instagram and Facebook. So we're going to answer those questions real quick and then we're going to wrap this up. I've received several questions through social media, Instagram, Facebook, things like that. And I've received a few texts and emails asking different questions. We're going to jump onto a couple of those real quick. The first one comes from Lemon Racer X9. He says, I'm a crew member on a Lemons car. Several members have air dams and front splitters made from old NASCAR splitters. No one really has any explanation of what the material is made out of and the size. Can you elaborate on that and give an example? It's pretty simple. So the front splitters, they are a composition. Some of it is plastic and some of it is carbon fiber. The technical name for this is Tegris, T-E-G-R-I-S. They come in different sizes. This is the Xfinity front splitter. It's a two-piece. Some of these are wider, thicker. This is a 2007 Car of Tomorrow front splitter, the real big one that you saw in 2007. This is going to go on my Kirk Shelmerdine car. Most of them are between 3/4 and 5/8 of an inch thick, and they do have support rods to hold them up. The width varies as well. I've seen some of them that are very thin, some that are very thick, some that stick out past the edge of the car like the COT splitter does, and I've seen some that are recessed in. Some of the rules clarity, it was a fluid rule. It changed quite a bit. Most of the parts now that you see on the Xfinity car are spec parts, so they have a 5-star number or a NASCAR number stamped into them, which follows into the next question. I had another gentleman ask about skirts. His name is Tom Terry, and he asked about skirts. Skirt material and size. So skirt material is plastic. Most of it is EMD plastic. Most of it is about 3/16 of an inch thick. So as you see, these are 6 inches long. It's smooth on one side and it's got a texture on the other side. This comes in a 4x8 sheet. I usually get it in a 4x8 sheet at the metal company, and the metal company will shear this to length. Most places you go to have shears that are 14, 16, 18 feet long to shear long material. So what I do is I buy an 8-foot long sheet. I get it sliced down into 6-inch increments, and I can make one-piece skirts for the driver's side of the car, and then I can piece it and cut it down for the passenger side where the aluminum continues on to cover the exhaust port. I have seen some of these cars within Facebook groups that use quite literally garbage like Lowe's, Home Depot garden edging. That garbage doesn't belong on a race car, much less a NASCAR series car. No team would ever run that. In the older days, before the splitter on the front of the car, teams would make a valance out of this, and the main reason they would make it out of the plastic versus the aluminum is they would go out and practice and set the ride height of the car, and it would scrub off and it would seal the nose of the car to the track. It's much harder for the aluminum to do that, and the aluminum can dig in and bend under, whereas the plastic will just wear off pretty rapidly. On the Xfinity car, such as the Supra here, it comes from 5-star. It's a lot more flimsy, and it has a 5-star part number actually molded into each one. This is a right side, and as I've said before, you can see where it stops. That's because 5-star makes this piece this long. Holes are spec holes where they want them. NASCAR wants it. And this is where your jack stub is, and the rest of it is aluminum on the right side for your exhaust. This is a left side. This is an older pre-cut left side where a team has cut out a jack bolt, and right here is a 5-star part number as well. Here's a stack of brand new ones that I've had on the shelf. They've never been cut. These can be used for left or right. So that's where all of the splitter material comes from. Now the thickness on this, I've seen as thin as 1/8 and almost as thick as 1/4, depending on the team. Some of them heated them and rolled the bottom out for side force. NASCAR got onto a lot of that stuff and cut it out pretty quickly. So that's everything for skirts and actual splitters on the front. Our next question comes from a gentleman named Texas Ryan's Rangers 34. He asked, I've recently read your PRI article in which you've contributed to and the down cycle stream of old race cars. How well do you think the HSR class and classes of vintage race car are going to succeed going forward, with the actual next-gen car being a proprietary piece that's hard to get a hold of? All right, so I'm going to give you my no-holds-barred thought and feelings on HSR. I think it's great that NASCAR got involved and it became NASCAR Classic. I think that aspect is great. I also think it's part of a money grab. I think some people have seen the actual growth in it and thought that they could do things like that. My problems with HSR are regulation, administration, and participation. Now, let's go through those three parts. So, regulation. There are cars within HSR that fall into different classes, and they're in the wrong classes, and people build these cars purposely, and it's kind of ridiculous. There's no reason you should see aluminum with an R07. There's no reason that you should have a Banjo Thunderbird with the front clip cut off and a front steer clip put on it. I know because I built that car and hung a body on it. So there's a lot of different cars in there. The policing of the regulations is not very stringent. I also know for a fact there are big motors in that class. There are a lot of people there that say no, and there's a lot of evidence that says yes, there is. It's very interesting, and I'm not really a fan of the administration portion of it or the regulation portion of it, because you have people that are board members and there are directors of HSR, and they sit on this board and committee that make decisions competition-wise for the class and administratively that compete in it. You cannot be a competing member, or you should not be, I find it as a conflict of interest, to be a competing member in a series and be a director or someone that makes regulations or has a say-so in it. You don't see a player on Sunday, also the referee in the NFL. You don't see a baseball player at a player game also as the umpire. You don't see it. Managers aren't the referees. It's just, it never happens in other sports. You know, Jerry Jones isn't the commissioner of the NFL. He owns a team. He participates. He can't officiate it as well, but it happens there. I don't think that's right. The other thing that I see in this falls into kind of the car category and class, and I find it kind of frustrating as well. There are people that have come into it, and I've been doing this for more than 25 years. There are people that have come into this arena of vintage race cars since, I'd say, the global pandemic crisis of 2020, that want to build these cars, and they're not building them for the right reason. And what does that mean? There are people that like these cars for their attention. They like the attention this car brings them. It's not so much that they like the sport or they care to build the car or participate. They like more attention they get versus the car they build. If that car brings them more attention, the happier they are, the better they feel about it. They're not just there because they care about the sport. I see that a lot. The other thing is people that like to use the term I restored or I do restore when they don't do jack shit other than take this car to that guy, let him put a body on it, take it over here, let this guy paint it. I'm gonna take it over there and let him put stickers on it. And I don't know jack shit about this car, but I'm gonna haul it to Georgia and I'm gonna let my competitor do the setup on it, and then I'm gonna try and outrun them. So if you think you're ever gonna outrun somebody that's already in a series and you ask them to do work on your car and you think you're gonna outrun them, you're not. It's just not gonna happen. You know, Hendrick isn't taking their car to Roush to try and win. Spire isn't taking their car to Penske and asking them to put a hot setup on it so they can win. It's not going to happen for you in HSR if you take your car to a competitor and ask them, hey, you're also a referee or a board member of the series and you build cars for money, build my car because I want to come and race against you and be competitive. If you believe that's going to happen, you need to have your head checked. That's all I can say. That's one of my main reasons with that. And when you have someone, and I've been told this before, I've gone to an HSR event before, and when you take a car and you roll your car out and somebody says, you can't race that car, it's too new and it's an unfair competitive advantage, and then you see a legendary NASCAR driver with his son's Camaro sitting over here, his son's SS and throwback Napa colors, and you're told you're not that driver and you're not that famous, you can't race it, that is hypocrisy. And that's one reason I don't participate. Would I love to? Absolutely. I might build a car to go out there and jump curves and slam the side of somebody else, and people may not like it, but we'll see where it leads to. I hope you guys enjoyed this channel. I hope you guys enjoyed the build on this car. The next stop for this car is going to be on a setup plate. I'm going to try and bring you video of that. Where I do it at, I don't know if they will allow it. I don't know if cameras are allowed in, and I don't know if I can film there, but I'll find out because I'd really like to show you guys some stuff. If not, you're going to see it fired up and moving down the road. After setup, it's going to get heated and primed. We're going to run the engine, check the timing, run it up and down the street, and then it's going in the box, and we're going to track day in October, which is going to be epic. That's going to be after I get back from Utah. I love this car. I love the support you guys have showed me. It's awesome, and it's great. One of the other questions that I want to address real quick before the end of this video is people keep asking me, hey man, any merchandise, any shirts? How do you make this channel run when you don't sell anything? I'm here to build race cars for you guys and to give you guys the best information I can. Everything that you see here is funded by me, and when I recommend a product, it's a product I pay for out of my own pocket. It's not an endorsement that I've been given. There are a lot of people out there when you watch these YouTube videos, I can't watch half the shit that's on the internet because you have people that come on YouTube and they want to tell you about building a car, but hold on for a minute, I'm going to spoon this shitty ass cereal in my mouth because they're giving me money to tell you to buy this garbage, and I don't do that. I don't sell out to other corporations or people to fund my builds that I fund out of my own pocket off of your money. You shouldn't have to support me in what I want to do. I should be helping you guys do what you want to do and do the same thing. That's the way I see it. Some shitty box of meat sitting on your porch all day while you're working all day and coming home and it's half rotten. I'm not trying to sell you that crap or a VPN. As far as t-shirts, I've been asked about that a lot. T-shirts and stickers and hats. Would I do it? Probably. And I've been thinking about it because it's enticing. And there's a lot of demand for it. If I do it, you're going to see something original, much like the Stock Car Surplus Circle logo that I came up with my wife or something like that. I will probably do something in that realm. What you won't see is a rip-off design. And I hate this. You see this, especially within the NASCAR community. Every company, every YouTube channel, all these people, they'll take a race team logo, they'll rip off their logo and design and put their name on it. They'll rip off the Goodwrench font and make their own crap. They'll rip off a series logo and make their own crap on there. I'm not trying to sell you something that's unoriginal and ripped off. So if you guys see a shirt or a sticker or anything, it's going to come directly from me, and it's going to have my own original logo on it. Thanks, guys. I appreciate you watching. Please take the time to subscribe, like, and comment below, and tell me what you guys want to see next. I'm thinking it's going to be the Kirk Shelmerdine car, or I've got a Gen 6 Toyota in the back, and I've got a Gen 6 Hendrick car in the back. Which one of those would you want to see? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks, guys. I'll see you next time.